Hello everyone, Smothered Run again, and this is episode 4 of my Jool 5 challenge. Here we're just getting rid of sending the Ascension back to the KSC so that we can send up the other vessel, because it's now about 9 days before my launch window, and I've discovered that I need to have more parts. I didn't bring enough, I didn't put enough on there. The original version of this mothership had an oxygen recycler and or filter and a water purifier somewhere on the vessel. Almost, I think it was clipped in there. So of course that's against the rules. So when I was redoing the design, I forgot to put those parts back in. So now I need to send this guy back and send up another shuttle with those two parts. I think I have a fix for it. Tested it out in another save, and seems to work. You'll notice that I rarely ever put the throttle much past 2/3 or even half thrust, as it starts to get quite uncontrollable, especially when it's the shuttle is empty or nearly empty. Right here is a perfect example of how uncontrollable the shuttle gets once you go past really 2/3 thrust. Just wants to basically do cartwheels the entire time. So 2/3, and now we're just doing the same thing we always do with this: deorbit, try to get the trajectory to be somewhere in the middle of the ocean there. And we're decoupling those tanks because we don't need them. I could return it, and it really doesn't affect the shuttle's landing characteristics too much, but whatever, not really playing in this save for money, so who cares. Also adjusting the orbital engines as well as the two lower main engines. The orbital engines, putting them to their straight 90-degree position instead of the inclined, as that generally helps when I'm getting closer to the top of the atmosphere or even close to the runway. Generally helps keep the shuttle pointed in the direction I want to fly when I engage the engines if I need to. The two lower main engines, I just lower them so that they don't really interfere with the body flap. They don't look too goofy as I'm doing although, you know what? It does still look goofy. Alright, we'll just leave them for next time. Anyways, and I have the third main engine at the top engaged, as that actually provides more of the thrust. The two orbital engines do sort of provide a little bit of thrust vectoring control. They don't really add any speed. And they're really just those three engines that I have on there are just basically for emergencies if I'm a little short of the runway or if I overshoot and I need to do an abrupt turnaround and try to make it back to the runway if I don't have enough altitude. So this whole landing generally takes from anywhere between 100 to 150 kilometer orbit. Takes about half an hour to land, even using physical time acceleration. Here I started my S-turns more than a little bit late. You can see the red crosshair putting me out in the middle of the ocean. So I will have to loop around. I could try to make it for the other runway on the island, but I always try to get right back to the KSC if I can. This shuttle has the aerodynamics of a brick, which is fine for as far as shuttles go. If you don't want it to gain speed, you can have it lose quite a bit of speed fairly quickly, especially if you can be once you're able to get down into the lower velocities range in about 300 meters per second or less. You can start actually getting a good bite into the atmosphere and have pretty decent control. So just accelerating here to about, I think this is now 4 times regular speed, 2 times. Coming in for the approach. I'm not actually, as you can see, I'm not actually using MechJet to fly the shuttle. I'm flying it manually. I just use the landing guidance on the nav ball just to give you an idea of where the runway center line is when I'm further out. Right now I'm basically strictly visual. And that nav ball is, the guidance is just there just in case I really mess up or if I get really lost. Ideally, you want to land this shuttle about between 50 and 80 meters per second, and I am clearly way above that. Again, I didn't manage my S-turns properly and I didn't bleed enough speed. So it's been a while since I've used, I think this is the second flight I've had with this shuttle since I started replaying KSP again. I used to be able to land this thing when it was flying about 75 meters a second and have no bounce or swerving, or in this case flying off the end of the side of the runway into the ditch, but it appears our pilot's trying to be like Jet. And I know this is KSP 1.13. I did try this shuttle in 1.6 as is, and the wheels do basically the same thing. So now 3 days later, we figured out the plan. We're launching our next one. This is the the Providence. I was going to say Prometheus, but that's something else. That is the KSO Providence. I'm using textures that I got from somewhere, somehow, a long time ago. So there are about 6 different, I think 5 or 6 different shuttles with different names on them. Man, I love that stand. If you guys haven't tried out modular launch pads, try it out. Flight control check. Random explosion. Engines work. Vectoring. And here we go. This roll to my desired inclination was a little rockier than last time, and quite honestly very herky-jerky and not that great. I'm not really thrilled with my piloting skills on that one. I'm just going to accelerate through the launch as quickly as possible because I've got a lot to do in this episode. Coming up, booster separation is my favorite part. Accelerating back to 4 times regular speed. And again, just managing the throttle, maintaining as much control as possible. The sharp-eyed observer will also notice that I no longer have that KW rocketry external pair of reaction wheels. I replaced those with a single inline reaction wheel at the attachment point on the bottom of the fuel tank, so it's actually nested inside the recess on the fuel tank. You'll be able to see that on the craft file when I post it. Basically, well, I did like the stability that reaction wheel offered on the outside. It did look kind of goofy and sort of kind of clippy, but not really, because it's a 2.5 meter reaction wheel that I was using, and it's meant to clip on the outside or attach to the outside, and it's not a completely round 2.5 meter external fuel tank. So I just figured, for clarity, I'll just remove it, put a reaction wheel on the bottom, and be done with it. The reaction wheel on the bottom does sort of help. I've heard some people argue that or state that the reaction wheel on the bottom does affect the center of gravity, and then I've heard just as many people say the reaction wheel away from the center of gravity doesn't apply on the center of gravity or something. So anyways, also eons ago, back before version 1 of KSP and into the great wheel breakage version of KSP 1.13, you could use just straight press Z, press spacebar, and you go to space with this thing. Not so much anymore, as you pretty much need to be constantly managing your throttle. There are some out there I know who do use automatic pilot of some form or other. If you can make it work, great. I've just always had a preference to manual flying. Get me in Flight Simulator, however, and I would prefer to fly autopilot all day. Here we're docked, getting ready to do our fix. This little probe thing here is going to fly out, and it's got a little grappler from the Buffalo mod, and it's going to do it's my poor man's Canadarm right now. So discovered very quickly that the sun's disappearing, so I don't even need that solar panel on there that I attached. Plus the amount of electricity I have on this thing, I don't think I'm in trouble. So anywho, coming up. And now we're attached. And our engineer who's going to install the fix is Tifray. After I find the hatch. I'm just going to speed up through this a little bit, make it go quicker. So you saw she's got a ladder there. I find it much easier for my Kerbal to be fixed in place while doing anything with KIS or KAS while in space. Back to regular speed. I'm just going to sort out where I'm going to put the ladder so I can work and reach everything I need to. Here looks good. Perfect. And then I totally forgot how to use the attachment system, and then I discovered I can't surface attach any of this stuff. As a fighter, jet flies over my house. Cool. So I realized, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough space. And we look. Do we have enough space? Do we have enough space? Do we have enough space? No, there's another F-18 over my house. There's apparently a training exercise happening at the Air Force Base near my place. Fantastic. And off we go back into our airlock. Eventually. Tifray's very organized. She wants to put everything back where she got it from. Activating the water purifier and oxygen filter, and removing our little probe helper. We're actually going to take this guy back. The last episode I ended up, or the beginning of this episode, sorry, I ended up ditching the payload. You can return safely with about 2 tons of cargo attached into the back of the cargo bay, and probably half to 2/3 of your initial fuel load. You can actually return this shuttle fairly safely and land. The only thing is, it is just because you have so much extra mass, it is generally a little bit more difficult to slow down. I haven't quite tried it with 5 tons, but maybe I'll try that one day. Shuttle lifts, comfortably lifts about 10 to 12 tons into low Kerbin orbit. The higher you go, obviously, the less payload you can carry. But everybody knows that. And now I'm just double checking to make sure that I don't have to send up another mission with another set of filters. What else? Looks like everything's good. I checked it out for a little bit too afterwards, and it seemed to work with the crew of 6, so we should be good for our trip. And just doing multiple orbital changes just to slow down my orbit a little bit. Slow down, speed up. Slow down. And got a little too aggressive with my deorbiting burn, so I had to flip around and accelerate a little bit to at least get me close. Again, adjusting the engines, even though I don't think I will on the next time I use this shuttle. Other than just the 2 orbital engines being adjusted, everything else can stay the same. That don't use trajectories when landing a spaceplane, or really anything, if you can, you generally use, or I generally use the crosshair and take it with a grain of salt. It's usually pretty accurate, but it's not, of course, it's not going to interpret any or anticipate any of your movements ahead of time. So, anyways, got me pretty close. Had to do a little sort of kamikaze dive here to turn around and head back towards the runway. And instead of trying to come in at probably well over 200 meters a second at the 270 runway, I decided to come in for runway 9 or 09. So that just meant going back along the KSC and orbiting back down to it. So let off quite a bit more speed in this run. This landing actually turned out, I think, quite better than the last one. Quite better. Much better. Much better. Started getting a little concerned about my altitude and my velocity, but turns out I didn't need to. This is at 4 times regular speed too, so... And here we go, landing. And for some reason I decided to keep going. There we go. Well, we'll end it here. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.